but we happen to have a bottle of Pappy 23. So we will be doing our tasting class with probably the holiest of grails and the most unicorn.
The unicorn of bourbons.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to the Revival Social Club. My name is Mike Stojic.
I'm Malia Christie.
Malia Christie.
Hi, I'm Malia Christie.
David's back there. I think he gave up on us and just took off. But
Probably
he's like,
so.
this is killing him. It's too much stress.
Probably so.
Probably. Working with us is a lot of stress, I'm sure.
Mostly you.
But this episode, it should be the most stress-free thing. You're not actually making anything this time. We want to teach you how to taste.
Yeah.
Because I know you all can taste. It's one of our five senses. But we want to really show you how to experience taste and flavor profiling and identifying flavor profiles and seeing those subtleties in the things that you're drinking. And we will be drinking a little bit today to help demonstrate that.
Yes, and of those five senses, of course, the two, that really we're going to hone in on is smell and taste. Still looking at the color and everything too, but taste is 80% smell. So the two are very, very, very important when you're trying to taste something such as whiskey, bourbon.
We're going to be drinking
today.
Yeah, we'll be drinking bourbon today. But really, some of the things that we teach you or that we're going to be talking about, take with you to anything. Like I apply the same principles to when I'm eating food, drinking beer, wine, whiskey. It doesn't matter what it is. Taste is still the experience.
Yeah.
Is really what makes it so great, I think. I mean, you can just eat and drink, but really it's the experience that I think that makes it, makes it great, right?
That's right, and certain bourbons, they really help heighten the experience.
Certain bourbons are a lot more fun. So for this one, and we thought we would bring out a very special bourbon that you and I will have, and then you guys at home, if you have it, that's awesome for you. But we happen to have a bottle of Pappy 23. So we will be doing our tasting class with probably the holiest of grails and the most unicorn.
The unicorn of bourbons.
So we'll see what we get out of that. But as we're doing this, we always recommend like a really nice glass. I mean, you could, of course, use any glass you want. But we like to use Glencairn glasses. These are made in Scotland. We have a made for Revival with our logos on them. I have a cut crystal glass, Glencairn, and you have the regular crystal Glencairn glass.
Someone wanted to be fancy.
I wanted to be so fancy.
Someone was fine with whatever.
Just be fancy. It's a fancy bourbon.
Well then,
You can have, but I mean,
No.
It doesn't really change. It doesn't change the purpose of the drinking. But so
Right.
the reason we like to use these kind of Glencairn glasses, or if you have like a snifter, is because it kind of channels the aromatics of the bourbon. If you're using something that's bigger and wider mouth, like an old-fashioned glass, some of that may escape you because it is a high-proof alcohol, unlike a wine or a beer, I guess more like a wine, like a big red wine glass where it's open.
Yeah.
You kind of want the bouquet to come through.
Yeah, and that bulb at the bottom, that really helps you to swirl it around and open it up, as they say. But then all those, all the noses and different nuances that come out of it don't just go flying out of, like a rocks glass and go in every direction other than where it should go, in your nose. So it's
Right, because
big
of
on
the
the bottom and
high
narrow
alcohol
at the top.
content. So that's why we're going to use the Glencairn, and really it was made in Scotland for Scotch whiskey, so you can pick up on some of those nuances Emily was talking about, but really use it for anything. I mean, bourbons, cognacs, great brandies, rums, whatever, tequila. I use it for everything, so you can really try to figure out those subtleties in those different flavors.
So, first thing, the first part of tasting is always visual. You want to really look at the bourbon or, the spirit that you're drinking. I'm just going to keep saying bourbon because that's what we're having. But you want to note the color. You want to note, you know, how golden it is, how yellow it is, how dark or how light. That'll tell you, you know, the darker the bourbon is, that'll tell you that it was probably aged longer. And this one you can see is very, very
or
dark
potentially
amber,
a higher char level too
or,
sometimes.
Yeah, or a higher char level.
So yeah, I mean, give it a good look because it gives you a little bit of an indicator of what you're about to get yourself into. And then after that, I mean, obviously you can look at the legs and figure out viscosity and alcohol content that way too. But I don't really do much of that. I usually go straight into the nosing portion of it because I want to experience those flavors. So there's one of the ways I would recommend is if you're not familiar with nosing, start kind of low. You can start kind of closer to your chin and nose, especially if something's a higher proof, barrel strength stuff, because that's going to be a lot of alcohol that's going to come up and that could almost burn out your olfactory senses.
Yeah.
So if you start like lower, or about where your chin's at, inhale through the nose, keep your mouth open, and if you don't believe me, that actually helps you smell better.
It's true.
If you close your mouth, then we'll do it at home. I mean, this is what this is about. Experiment, keep your mouth closed, inhale through your nose, and then open your mouth and inhale through your nose, and you'll see you'll pick up a lot more subtlety. So let's do that.
Yeah.
And then as you're doing it, slowly bring it up to your nose until your your nose is in the glass.
Yeah, there you go. Dive in.
And then another thing, because the nose isn't perfect, right? You have, two different nostrils, and one of them, depending on the day and depending on how you're feeling, might be a bit more congested than the other. So you want to kind of rotate that glass around to really pull some more of those subtleties out.
Absolutely.
So what do you think? What are you getting?
So I definitely get a lot of woodiness on this. I can definitely, on the nose, I can definitely smell the barrel, that it was in there, the oakiness. I definitely get, just for the longer it spends time in the barrel, the more caramels and sweeter flavors are going to come out. So, I mean, right off the top, it's like, do you remember that the cocktail that I made, and it was based off of my favorite dessert in life. It's called sticky toffee pudding.
Yeah. So there's some toffee in that. Yeah. I was thinking like a more of a candied caramel instead of like a burnt caramel. But the thing too to remember is no matter what you're getting, you're always right. You're never wrong. We're all kind of built differently and we experience flavors differently. So no matter what you're smelling, no matter what you're tasting, you're always going to be right. Don't let anyone tell you you're wrong for the way you experience those flavors.
Yeah, for sure.
So once you kind of figure those out, and it is a little sweeter because it does pull those sugars, the longer it sits in the barrel, it pulls those sugars out of the wood that makes it sweeter. We'll go into actually tasting it. So one of the things I like to recommend is on your first sip, if you're neutral, because your mouth is neutral, swish it around like a Listerine or a mouthwash, right? Why do we do that?
You want to coat the entire mouth, the tongue, the cheeks, the roof of your mouth, because you taste differently in all different areas, and especially because when you're tasting bourbon or an alcohol, that very first sip is it's just gonna burn. That's what you're mostly gonna get. You're not gonna get a lot of the flavor profile or anything like that, especially if it's your first sip of anything of the day. So this one is just kind of to prepare you for really drinking it.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to taste past the burn if all you're focused on the burn. And then we're looking at what we're currently drinking. We have 95.6 proof. So, I mean, it's fairly high, just under 50% alcohol by volume. But you need to be able to taste past that burn. So once the burn subsides, then you take your second sip, right? And on that second sip, what you want to do is let it coat the entire tongue. Because like what Malia was saying, you taste differently on different parts of your tongue. You have your sweet flavor receptors are located up front, and then you have your bitter sour ones are on the back and the side. So to find some of those sweeter notes that are very common in bourbon, like your caramels, butterscotch, vanillas, cherries, and those sorts of things, this needs to sit on the tip of your tongue. Right. If you want to get some more of the earthiness, some of the more bitter tones, the wood, the char, the oak, those sort of things, it needs to sit on the back and the sides. So to truly experience the full thing, let it coat your entire tongue, right?
Right. And things you'll start to pick up on, like you were saying, the sweet, bitter, things like that, but also to pay attention to the mouth feel, and that's going to be the oils that come out of it. There's bourbons that are oilier than others, and then there's ones that are drier than others, and this one I think is very oily mouth feel. but then
Finish is-
very dry.
The finish is dry for me.
Very dry.
And this is a wheated bourbon. If you know anything about Pappy Van Winkle, it's wheated, so you expect it to be a little sweeter, a little smoother. Definitely get a lot of the char in there and some of the smokiness. Something else that I like to do, just as another added tip, while you're letting it rest on your tongue, exhale a little bit through your mouth. It's going to stir up the bourbon a little bit, get those congeners really working, and you're going to taste some of those different subtleties in the bourbon as well.
Yeah. Now, when he says congeners, those are things that those are kind of offshoots from the fermentation process. That alcohol that's created from those yeasts, congeners are the different things that are released from that.
It's a lot of the flavoring comes from those sort of things.
Right, and there's good congeners and there's bad congeners, and so it's okay if you ever taste anything and you're like, it tastes like chlorine, or I get the nail polish remover or something. There are many that those are some of the congeners you'll pick up on. Certainly not this one though. I don't get any of that. I get definitely the caramel, the vanilla, darker.
Tastes
fruits.
like we should be in an old library reading some big leather-bound book, smoking a cigar.
I was just about to say, I feel like I should be
Sipping on this.
smoking
I mean,
a
this is
tobacco
like-
pipe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and not just because of, the whole, we're drinking Pappy 23, yeah, quite right. But just because the tobacco and the leather and everything that comes out of that, it really can transport you when tasting, try to recall where you've been and memories you've had, because that's what something tastes like is always something that you've tasted before. And so, it's really cool because this can transport you either back to somewhere or to a place you'd like to be at that moment.
Absolutely. I mean, like, it's one of the biggest triggers for memory is smell and taste. So when you get to try new things and experience those different flavors, it takes you somewhere. And like I said, this reminds me of like being in like a big, crazy library, leather-bound books and mahogany.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The finish is the last part, and that's after you swallow. It's like what's left in your mouth, those flavors, how it feels, whether it burns when it goes all the way down, does it continue to burn for a while, or is it really, really smooth on the finish? So you say it has like a long finish if it burns and that flavor stays in your mouth for a long, long, long time. This one I don't think has a very long finish.
It has a longer finish for me,
Really?
but that's all right.
It's
So
very
like that's
dry.
kind of what I was saying in the
Very
beginning.
dry.
Like there's not I mean, it's different for each of us, and I can still taste it. It feels like it's got a fairly long finish for me. Like the flavor profile stays. There's like virtually zero burn. I mean, it's a very well done whiskey. So there's like no burn, even though it's close to 100%. But when we say finish, like think of it. There's like three areas that I always try to teach. Is like there's like the initial flavor that comes through, midway through, or that mid palate flavor, and then on the finish. If you got a drink or anything that you're eating or drinking that from start to finish, it's exactly the same flavor profile, then you have something that's very one-dimensional.
Right.
It is not complex. But if you're eating or drinking something like a bourbon, that when you first take that sip to the mid palate to your finish, it's taking you on an adventure. Maybe it starts a little sweet, then it gets a little spicy, and then it kind of tails off. Well, that's multidimensional. It's going to have a lot more complexity to it. And for me, and I think for us, that's the mark of like quality.
Right.
Is complexity. And whatever you're eating or drinking, if it's taking you on a bit of a journey while you're experiencing it, that's the mark of something that's really fantastic. If start to finish, it's the same flavor, that's boring, one-dimensional. Who needs it? Like,
yeah, and it's a good,
money is never an indicator. It's always
Right.
complexity and the flavors that you're pulling from it.
and it's a good testament to a lot of whiskeys that have been aged for so long. A lot of them, they're just not that good after a while. They've just they've lost all of their own characters, and it's just barrel that you're tasting. But there's just a few who've done it right, and the Pappy Van Winkle.
They kill it. Like, this is fantastic.
15,
Yeah.
the 20s. The 20 is probably my favorite. 15 and 20, I actually like a little bit better than the 23. But for it to be aged for 23 years, and we're still standing here talking about, caramels and how it reminds of a dessert or leather or smoking a pipe and all that stuff, and it's still new flavors are coming out every time I breathe in and out.
So it is a long
That
finish.
means that it's done right. Yeah, it's long.
Okay, well, you said it was short.
Didn't feel
so-
long. It didn't feel long at first, but now that
Wait, hold on,
I'm sitting
you're
here,
talking,
now
so
I'm
taste
sitting
it.
here going, man, if we had 2 more minutes, I've got like 5 other memories of what it tastes
Yeah,
like.
so it is a very nice long finish. But there you go, guys. That's kind of how you taste. Some things to think about. Consider complexity. Let it sit on your tongue. The exhaling, the inhale. Think of all those different things, maybe you'll enjoy your bourbon a bit more.
No answer is a wrong answer, but one piece of advice is get a book, just a tasting book. It can be any notebook, and as you're trying different things, write down those differences, and then you can remember what you like, and then you can start to compare and contrast the different bourbons.
There you go.
There you
All right,
go.
guys, thanks for joining us. Grab your bourbon, do a little tasting, experience it for what it really is, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.